when we went from sail-driven ships to mechanically driven ships, it was a real break in the long basic history of the world, because up until that point, every single thing that went to sea was either pulled by a hand or it was blown by the sea, by the wind. Suddenly, when people introduced machinery, the whole of that stopped, and we've gone into machine-driven ships. Now, the bit in the middle, the transition from pure sail to pure steam or pure energy, as it were, is absolutely fascinating, the whole of the way in which it developed. And we're very lucky in having, let's say, the Victory and the Cutty Sark, and the Great Britain, which is the halfway between the two. But that transition will only happen once, can only have happened once in the history of the world. So it'd be crazy if we didn't do something to give people a view of what it looked like, I mean, how the transition took place.
What do all these ropes do? Well, thanks to the Maritime Trust, of which Prince Philip is president, the British public can find out without ever getting their feet wet. The Trust is charged with preserving the seafaring traditions of the nation, traditions which once saw Britannia rule the waves, traditions embodied in the great ships of commerce and of the line. In dry dock or at anchor, in Portsmouth or at Greenwich, they've been carefully restored, and to step on board is to step back into history. Mary Rose, the Victory, the Cutty Sark, the ship that indirectly gave the race its name. Stand behind her wheel, and just for a moment, you're there. Legs braced, back to the binnacle, running before a hurricane round the Horn. A romantic dream. The reality was very different.
Well, the Cutty Sark was one of the 85 or so clippers built especially for the trade, bringing tea from China to bring it back to London and to make sure it came as fast as possible. Cutty Sark was known to be the fastest ship of her day, but unfortunately that didn't allow her to be the winner of what was known as the China Tea Race, an annual event bringing the first of the season's tea home from various ports in China to London. They used to cram every space. This ship could carry 814 tons of tea. Come to sea as a young lad, and off you go, learning the ropes and finding out how to handle the ropes and the sails, working 4 hours on duty, 4 hours off, and often as not in rough weather you're called out when you're off watch to work. So you worked a minimum of 12 hours a day, and often in dangerous conditions, in icy water up to your waist, washing around the decks. And you had to be up that rigging, holding on to sails. They say one hand for yourself and one for the ship, but when you're aloft, have you ever tried tying a rope, a knot in a rope with one hand? Pretty well impossible.
And of course, in the case of man overboard in a ship like this, there was no question of turning around.
Oh, no. No, they did in fact at one time lose 2 men off the jibboom. The helmsman standing here put the helm the wrong way, the bow dipped and the sea washed these 2 men off. They did turn the ship around in that case, but it's very rare that this was able to be done. It so happened you had most of the crew on the deck at the time. They managed to take the ship around, but these men wearing their heavy leather sea boots, they went straight down. They were never seen again.
Good evening. It's now feared that all 18 people missing from the British sailing ship Marquise have lost their lives in the seas off Bermuda. The 117-foot-long Marquise left Bermuda yesterday with the other tall ships for a voyage to Nova Scotia. 80 miles out to sea, a vicious squall smashed the boat onto her side. A Polish schooner picked up the 9 survivors who'd been on deck at the time the ship went down. They'd been able to climb onto life rafts and light flares to guide.
We were racing from Bermuda to Halifax, and we came to Halifax. I was on the big Polish square rigger Dar Młodzieży, and when this terrible news reached us at sea, so the whole fleet was shattered. It was like really losing your own child. And in Halifax, they've organized a big memorial service. We had only one Russian ship, to Krusenstern. So off I went, and I came to Krusenstern, and I saw the captain. Of course, he received me immediately. And I said to him, there we are, we will have the memorial service and so on. It was 84. And he said, oh, Janka, scratching his head, this is very difficult. You know very well that we are not churchgoers and we don't believe, so how we'll go, yes, to church and so on. I said, Gennady, this is not the question of believing. This is the question that we lost our family. The family lost our children, 21 of them. So we are doing this to be together and to cry together. So he said, I can't decide. Yes, come back. I will give you an answer in 1 hour time. I knew why, because of course he wanted to consult his KGB. Right. I came in 1 hour time, and he said, all right, I'm sending 40 cadets. We were all assembled, so we left the part of the church for 40 Russian cadets and so on, and we were all assembled. I was sitting next to my chairman, and suddenly it was a hush, and someone said, Russians are coming. And the whole church went totally silent. Russians are coming. So I turned my head and I saw all this detachment. Yes, I took their heads off and so on, under the red banner with the black cockade and so on, they marched. And I saw them. It was not 40, it was many, many more. So they took their places and the rest stood and so on, and they sang with us and they behaved themselves absolutely perfectly and so on.
That is the Cutty-Sark Trophy, which is awarded at the end of each race series to the ship that, in the opinion of all the other participating ships, has done most to foster international understanding and goodwill amongst the fleet.
And how is that assessed, do you know?
Well, it's up to each individual master, and indeed his crew, if he likes to consult them, to decide which vessel, in their opinion, has done something special during that race series. I can perhaps illustrate it with just a couple of stories. Krusenstern, who came into our races at a time of the Iron Curtain and difficulties with the USSR, that was thought to be an occasion worthy of some special prize and award, and she was awarded the Cutty-Sark Trophy. That was in 1974. In 1976, the Belgian ship Zenobia Graham, she helped 2 other participants who had become becalmed in the Atlantic, and she towed them. She dropped out of the race and towed them to the other side of the Atlantic. They were running short of water and fuel. And that was marked by the award of the Cutty-Sark Trophy.
And that, I suppose, is what the International Cutty-Sark Tall Ships Race is really all about, isn't it?
It is all about bringing together young people from many different nations to race in friendly competition at sea.
Ready, bye. Ready. Lead.
As youth workers, we look at it from the point of view that this is an ongoing process. The opportunity to go sailing on the tall ships is a great opportunity, obviously. But for us, the work has started some time ago and will continue to be done after the tall ships event itself is over as well. Hopefully the bonds that have been made with this group here will be strong bonds and will continue.
Pull in more. Pull in more. Pull us doing that way a bit. Okay.
We've spent time discussing with them sort of attitudes and values that they have in relation to religion and other issues as well. And they've learned a wee bit about themselves, and they've also learned a wee bit about the other members in the group as well, which was something that we were hoping for.
Why did you want to go?
For experience, a good experience, and for the cross-community meeting.
Chance in a lifetime. It's a one-off thing. I've never ever been on a boat before, and I'm really looking forward to it. Like,
sleep, all early hours in the morning.
I'm most looking forward to getting soaked.
Like now?
I'm going up mast. I want to go up the main mast at the very top.
What are you looking forward to most about the race?
Swedish women.
Tell me some of the kind of mix and match situations that you would get on a tall ship.
Right, well, the most extreme case I can think of is where I had two young ladies from Rodin sailing with two inner-city boys who were on probation. And most of the cruises on British sail training vessels are from this mixed background. And I think this is very important. It gives them a chance to realise they're only, you know, all the same after all. And it's amazing how successful it is when they work together as a team.
Come on, move! Oh, it's not the right one, is it? Hold on the bloody thing!
The young lad who's on probation, and maybe he's never experienced anything quite like it before, he'll find when the chips are down that he's equally as good as a public school boy who thinks he knows everything, and really they have to rely on one another, so they help each other, and yes, you can see him grow in stature and in self-esteem.
It's always very difficult to evaluate what these young people get out of a week or a fortnight on board the ship. But there's one story which comes to mind which captures it for me. That is a young boy aged 16 or 17 who was on the wheel of the ship, Sir Winston Churchill, when she was docking. And the captain was conning the ship, as we call it, and calling back the helm orders. And this boy was doing exactly as he was told, and he did it beautifully.